Hi, I'm Tessa from Tales from Outside the Classroom, and today I'm going to talk you through how to use my free phonics diagnostic tracking spreadsheet to look at, manage, and make instructional decisions on your phonics data. So first up, when you open it, you get to the Student Names tab. There are 30 spots available. I'm hoping nobody has classes larger than that. But you don't want to move beyond this because things will not transfer to the later pages. So I have added some dummy data for 21 students. I have it here. I like to just delete this one in between my student names and the rest of it because it just helps me visually when I want to hide some rows later, which I will show you how to do. If a student moves in, I am always able to come through and add that name, and then I can delete that next one. I don't, however, want to delete all of them. Just in case I start getting larger, I don't want to forget that there's only set up for 30. So I just like to keep them here just as a kind of a help so I know this is where I'm going to stop. So once I add my names here, they will transfer on all of the pages later. So it saves you quite a bit of time there. Moving on to the next tab is the Test Names tab. Now, I have this set up with the Quick Phonics Survey because that's the assessment I've used for years and years and years, and it's the largest one I found that really works from letter names all the way to multi-syllable words. I realize for most people, you will not need that large of range, but this enables you to be able to go to whatever depths of students that you have. So even as a first grade teacher, you likely don't have many students working on 4-syllable words, but it is possible you do have one ready to be there. And so you can still store all of your data and kind of track each individual student's progress regardless of their grade level. This also means everybody in a building could use this same spreadsheet. So it's consistent throughout the building. As a third grade teacher, I really like using this because it lets me see the range of all of my kids. So this Test Names tab is set up with names and values. Whatever you edit here will transfer from all of these testing pages. So again, I have it set up based on the version of the QPS that I have been using. There are lots of other diagnostic phonics assessments out there. I will link to a post in the description below with my favorite diagnostic assessments if you are looking for an option. But let's say you are using one that matches your curriculum, your intervention program, whatever you're using, you are able to edit these names. And these point values. So let's say for letter names, you aren't doing 26, but you do 52 to do both capital and lowercase. Perhaps you do 54 because you include the A and the G. This allows you to edit it to meet your needs. Some assessments don't separate nonsense words from real words. Some don't have it in context. Some just have words in isolation. And so I wanted you to be able to make this work for you. So you can come in and change the point value, you can come in and change the name, and it will transfer throughout. Once you have that set up, you can hide this tab though, so it's out of your way for the year. You also can then set that up once, duplicate this file, and then you have that master ready to go for you for every year. So I'm going to show you how to hide that. You can click here in this drop down, and you can click Hide Sheet. When you hide the sheet, it removes it from here. It gives you a reminder that you can view your hidden sheets in the View menu, which are these lines. So it shows you all sheets. So you can click here. You can see how Test Names is grayed out. You can click it again, and it will pop right back up. But this is nice to know, nice to have hidden, because once you have done it for the beginning of the year, you are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and re-hide this, and we can look at our first sheet. So I have a spreadsheet set up for the beginning, middle, and end of the year diagnostic testing. Usually that is when most people do benchmarking windows. And then I also have 6 progress monitoring tabs set up. You don't have to use all 6. but they are set up this way. So I color coded these yellow and progress monitoring blue. You can change the colors on this if you would like. You again come to that drop down, click change color, and you could change it to whatever color matches what you would like. You also can change the name. So it's set up for BOY for beginning of the year, but you can rename it to BEG or whatever makes sense for you. So talking through some other things on this page, the top left here says beginning of the year. I have this preset up. You are able to change this name, but whatever you change here, this text will transfer to the individual student pages, so you want to be mindful of that. Right here we have all of those names we populated on our test names page, as well as the point value we put on our test names page. So rather than coming through and changing it on every single tab, you can just change it on that original and it will change throughout. My student names transferred over, which is why it's nice to only have them on that one page. If I have a student that gets added, I don't want to come here and add them. I want to come over here and add them so it again gets transferred throughout. You are able to hide this names tab if you would like, just like we did the test names tab. And then that way you can kind of look at your information or just have one less tab to make it a little easier to see. So I mentioned I like to leave one blank between my students and my other spaces, so it makes it easy for me to hide. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to left click on this number 25, since that's the first blank I don't want, and I'm going to hold it as I drag down to select all of these rows. I'm doing it on the number, so it's not selecting these cells, but it's selecting the whole row. Once all of those rows are selected, I'm going to right click and hide rows, and now they're just kind of visually gone for me. What you do on this tab will not transfer throughout. So each time I come to a new tab, I will want to rehide, but that is kind of nice because let's say I have another student that moves in after benchmark assessments in the fall, but before mid-year, and so what I hide here would only then be these because that student name got added later. Now let's say a student moves in 2 weeks after the beginning of the year and I do want to benchmark them and have her data shown here. You can come and there's little black arrows on the left here. You can click those and it will open everything you have hidden, and then you can always select just the ones that are remaining now, right click and rehide them. Now we are going to enter some kind of dummy data to show you how this works. So the percentage is calculated based on averaging what the raw score you enter here and that point value. So let's say I'm going to enter 25 and it's auto-calculated as a 96% or a green. I have the color set up so that anything between 80 to 100 is a green, anything between 60 and 80 is a yellow, and then anything lower than a 60 is a red. Now, that might not be the exact color setup that your district has. You are able to change the conditional formatting on these if you would like. That does take several steps, and it's a little bit more intensive than I would like to walk through in this video, but if you are familiar with conditional formatting, it'll be quick and simple for you. So I'm just going to go through and add some dummy data here just to get us going. All right, so I have letter names and sounds done for every kid, but let's talk about what happens when I don't do an assessment on a specific kid. So I'm gonna say we're gonna go to the CVC words, and obviously we're gonna give CVC words to all of these kiddos who scored green, so I'm gonna give them some scores there. let's say I didn't give the assessment to these students. Now, it probably doesn't make sense that I didn't, but let's just say for purposes that I didn't. So I'm going to leave them blank. You can see it defaults to a 0 because there is no score there. So I'm going to show you what you can do about that. So let's go to the first individual students page. That's what these numbers are. I have each of the student pages labeled white. Again, you can change that color. You also can rename it. I use numbers for my kiddos, so I keep it this way, but perhaps you want to put it by student last name and how the alphabetized. You are able to do that. So let's talk through this data. So the student name is transferred over along with the testing time period based on where I told you it would. And then the scores are also transferred over as well as the names. So if you change a test name, it will change all throughout all of these pages and get displayed here. Now you see we have zeros all throughout, and so it could look like a student isn't performing well there. And we want to make sure we're reflecting the difference between a 0, which a student might actually get, and a test that was not tested. So I'm going to show you what we might do there. So basically, I want to get this operation to not happen. I don't want it to calculate a percentage. So I can basically just error it out by putting in a dash. And so you see it changes to value saying that division equation can't happen. And when I go back to that student page, it shows it there. So you can go through and do that with all of the assessments down here that you are not giving if you would like. You also could come through, like let's say you are a kindergarten first grade teacher, you could in theory delete these rows or hide these rows so they're not displayed if you know all of your students aren't going to be at that level, but you would have to do it for every individual kid. So for me, I just kind of like leaving them there. When I see this white hashtag value, I know that we didn't give that assessment. And so I just kind of leave it that way because I use this for me to look at the data. So I can just leave it that way and know that that means I didn't give this assessment or anything after it further. As I enter my test data, it will continue to auto-populate here. So I have our benchmark assessments together in the top row and progress monitoring down later. So you perhaps might want to come here and change this date. Instead of saying progress monitoring 1, perhaps you want to say PM September or something to give a specific date. You might want to add the dates to these to help you look at individual information. As a classroom teacher, I really, really like looking at my benchmark columns in this way because I am able to quickly see who I want to group together for instruction. So I can just quickly glance at colors and say, well, these 3 kiddos likely are going to need to be together, and then these 3 kiddos likely are going to be need to be together. Perhaps I move that 16 with the 15s. Really, of course, depends on your data, but looking at it by column is a lot easier for me to know this kid is deficient in this area. And that's part of the reason I like to use this is because once I have students at an upper level down here, it really is much easier for me to look and see, oh, these 5 students I want to keep giving the assessments with. Obviously, there are likely not going to be 5 students in a row, but it is, in my opinion, still easy to visually look at, oh, these 5 are green, I'm going to keep going, and kind of have that data display for them later. We are going to go ahead and look. Ivan is student number 10. We're going to go ahead and look at his. I'm going to show you one more trick. When I come over to that All Sheets tab, you can see I can't right now see number 10 for Ivan, but I can click here and scroll down here to go to a number 10. And it's going to jump me right to Ivan's page. That is going to be a lot faster, especially on these later ones, than kind of scrolling all the way through. Because unfortunately, it doesn't scroll nearly as fast as I would like it to usually. Oh, that is Jerome. There we go. So here is Ivan. So you can see Ivan's green transferred over here because he had those further assessments. So I'm going to want to have something to indicate where I finally dropped off for him. And so erroring that out is a nice way of doing that. Now, I did a dash. There are other options. You can do a bar key, whatever is easiest for you. It's what's in this column that gets transferred over, so it doesn't really matter what you enter here. I would not recommend you come in and delete that row to make it white, just because if you need to come back through and add it later for any reason, it is that formula is going to be gone, because what you actually deleted was the formula. But if you know you're not going to come back and modify old data because you are going to be using these pages throughout, that is also an option as well. One other thing I wanted to show you is that tabs are movable. So let's say you want to move your progress monitoring tabs in between your assessments so that you are kind of looking at it in the order that you give it. So there is no problem at all moving these tabs between the diagnostic window. Everything is set up based on what this tab is called. So you can move it into any order that you would like to be displayed here. You also, again, could hide those old ones once you are later in the year. So let's say I'm going to hide the beginning of the year one because it's January and I don't often need to look at it. So I can hide it, hide that sheet, and then only have available to me those specific ones I want to look at and reference during the year. That doesn't affect any of the actual data. It just removes the tab from being in your way. I always, let's say you are at an MTSS RTI meeting and you want to access it again, you always can come back and again re-access it, and it goes right back to where it had been before. So it's just kind of a way of making things neater and easier for you. If you want to print this student page for any reason, you are able to print it. You can go to File, Print, and right now I have it set up to fit to its width, so everything is displayed here. I also have it set up to just print the current sheet. So let's say I want to have just Adam's data because I want to take it to an RTI MTSS meeting. I can do that. Now notice there's also a selected cells. So I'm going to come back and select just these cells, and then I'm going to do File, Print. I can come to selected cells, and then it just shows me that information. So let's say it's later in the year. I don't need to know progress monitoring, 4, 5, 6, anything like that. I'm able to set that up by just changing this print drop down. Now, because it's set to fit to width, it is on 2 pages and broken a bit. I can change it to fit to height, and then it fits it on 1 page. Something like this might be helpful to send home to parents so they can see how students are doing on assessments. If you were to do that, however, I would say it's important that you educate your parents on how to interpret this data. So for example, if you're sending it home with that value, that you tell them this is where we stopped testing, anything below it just was not assessed. This is when it might be helpful to delete rows so parents aren't looking at skills that students wouldn't be expected to do. So for example, if I was a first grade teacher, I might draw a line that says after art controlled and say this is the end of first grade expectation, and I might delete these rows. I might not even draw the line, I might just delete the rows so parents don't look at it and get concerned. And then that way, if I have a student working above level, I can still have wherever that student is on the pages, and then just kind of write a note or let parents know that art controlled is the end of first grade expectation and they're working above grade level in phonics. I think that's it for FAQs on how to use this. Again, as a teacher, I really like these pages to help me make my groups using the colors and the percentages. But the individual student pages are super helpful for looking at an individual student, that student's progress or lack of progress for PLCs, RTI, MTSS, things of that nature. If you have any questions, please just leave them in the comments below, and I hope this spreadsheet is helpful for you.